and welcome back to the Birdhouse Rules. Let's talk today about all the books that I read in September. I don't have any of these books physically anymore. The ones I checked out from the library I have already returned, and the rest were on my Libby app, mostly on audio. So we'll just go in order of the books read. I will put the cover on the screen. Okay, so the first book that I read in September was Colleen Coble and Rick Acker's What We Hide. And this one is really good. She is a professor at a college, and it does have a lot of grief representation, loss of a child in it. And so she's dealing with that, and her ex-husband, or I don't know that they're fully separated. So she's working at a college that her family is like known in this college. They had a lot to do with its founding, and they're trying to keep it up and running. She discovered some antiques are missing, and there's some things not adding up, and so she gets embroiled in that. And her husband, whom she separated from, he's a lawyer, and he ends up as part of the story as well. So it's a good book. I gave it 4 stars. It's a Christian. There is some good faith representation in it. I wasn't crazy about the ending. I won't spoil it because I'm pretty sure there's another book that's coming out about this in this duology or whatever it turns out to be. So I won't spoil it. But I wasn't crazy about the endings. Book number 2, the next book that I read, was Every Time I Go on Vacation Someone Dies by Catherine Mack. And she is a mystery writer, and she is going on a tour, and they are in Italy, I do believe, and they're doing a tour, and then she's also like doing research for her next book. While on this tour at one of the sites, somebody turns up murdered, and so in order to clear her name and all this stuff, she's got to figure out who did it. And it's very much along the lines and over the top like Finley Donovan. So if you enjoyed that series, you'll really enjoy this series. I do think that there was quite a lot of bad language in it. It was a blast, and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of awkward stuff. It was fast-paced. You get caught up in it. I don't say in my review if there's any cuss words in it, but I'm pretty sure there was a little bit of language in it. But it was good overall. And then the next one was Kristen Hanna's The Women. I started this back in the spring, but my dog is crunching food, and I apologize if you can hear him. There's nothing I can do about it. And he's also shaking the camera every time he runs by, because he goes in there where his dog food bowl is and then brings it in here to munch on it. Anyway, I started this back in the spring, but we had several loved ones pass away in the spring, and so I was having a hard time. And Kristen Hanna's books are very intense and very emotional, so I could not just read this straight through. So I finally picked it up and finished it in September. It was excellent. This is about a Vietnam War nurse, and so about half the book, 40 to 50% of the book is while she's a combat nurse over there in Vietnam. And then she comes home, and then the rest of the book is about what she deals with coming home. And she struggles with PTSD, and everywhere she goes, her father even says it, and other folks say it, that there were no women in Vietnam, which is not true because we had combat nurses. And even the VA tells her that. And it's just awful because they believe that as a combat nurse, there's nothing wrong with her, and she shouldn't be having any of these issues that she's having. And I, thank the Lord, have never been in that situation. I can only imagine it, but I feel like anytime you have to deal, I I just tip my hat to every nurse out there, because I feel like it is its own level of trauma, no matter what kind of nurse you are. And to add the next layer of a combat nurse on that is even more so. And I can't even imagine it. And so from beginning to end, I was bawling my eyes out in this book, which is why I put it down in the spring. But it's so good, and it's so thoroughly researched. And then she makes friends with, which is why it's called The Women, some other combat nurses. And it's about their journey together and how they just strengthen each other and hold each other up through all the trials that they go through during their time over there in Vietnam and their return. And it's an excellent story. There is a lot of bad language. There is like drug use, and there is like cheating in the book, and then there's like loss of a child. There's just a lot. So read all the trigger warnings if you're interested. And every time you pick up a Kristen Hanna book, they're going to be intense. That's just the way she writes. But it's really good, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So the next book I read, I had on NetGalley, and it's Murder on Devil's Pond by Elila Rose. That's how I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce it. This was a cozy mystery, and it was really good, and I really liked this story. I haven't read anything else by this author. As I said, I got this from NetGalley. This takes place in a little small town in Vermont, and she's running it's not a bed and breakfast. They call it an old Victoria hotel. And she is trying to revive it, her and her sister, and they're doing all this stuff. And she becomes friends with the neighbor next door, and he's a grumpy old man. And she thinks that they weren't super close, and so she checks on him every day, and they talk about different things, but he's always kind of grouchy, and because he's that way. And so they have a bond, and then he ends up murdered, and then it's her trying to figure out what happened to him and why it happened to him and all this stuff. And so it's a really, really good story. I really enjoyed this one. The next one that I read is The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. I have not read anything by this author. This is the first book, and I don't know if I'll continue. Not because it wasn't bad. I did give it 4 stars. It was excellent, but I didn't know going into it. I thought it was just like a mystery thriller, but her books are horror books. I don't know if they all are, but several of them are, and most of them deal with ghosts. Like this one had that aspect to it. And I don't like being scared, and you can call me a fraidy cat. I'm fine with that. I don't mind. And I have a different opinion on ghosts than most people. It's just not this casual thing. I feel like that's a very deep subject for another video, but this story was really good. I gave it 4 stars. There is a lot of content that I didn't like because it was this. So back up. The story takes place in dual timeline. I think a lot of her books do. And it's about a girls' boarding school. And you have the past timeline where this girl, it opens with she's running away from something. And then the present timeline, the girl that we follow in the present timeline, her sister had ended up murdered on the property of that boarding school. And it's closed and abandoned now. And so she's checking into it because she can't deal with it. She just doesn't understand what happened. And she's trying to figure all that out. So the more she researches, and then we have the paranormal aspect in there. And if you are looking for good spooky vibes and the dark school vibes, this is a really, really, really good one. It will freak you out. And so it's good. I don't think it's like horror book on the same level as like a Stephen King horror book. I feel like it's horror light and it's not gruesome, or I didn't think it was. And the mystery was good and intriguing and stuff, but it gets, so part of the reason I don't like being scared is it ramps my anxiety up, and then I can't sleep. And so after I read this book, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of the ghosts coming out of the walls and all that stuff. It wasn't that type of ghost story, but because my anxiety was way up here and I couldn't bring it back down after reading this book. So, but if you enjoy those kind of stories, her writing is really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm undecided. Let me know if you've read other Simone St. James books and if you like this style of book, and if all her books have that ghosty paranormal aspect in it, and how terrifying they all are. Because if they're all this level of scary and more so, then I may not continue, because as I said, my anxiety can't handle that. I need to be able to sleep. So the next book that I read was The Serial Killer's Guide to San Francisco by Michelle, I don't know how to pronounce her name. The book cover will be on the screen. And this one is good. I gave it 3 stars. The language is bad, of course. I got this on NetGalley. If I'm looking at what I wrote on my Goodreads review, that's why I'm looking down. I didn't figure out who the murderer was, which is always a plus. I enjoyed the setting of the book, and she gives guides. That's why it's called a guide. But she's a tour guide for San Francisco, and she gives tours. Well, she is also a notorious murderer's granddaughter. And so, and everybody knows it, or most people do. And a lot of stuff has been written about him. And so she wakes up one morning and hears of different murders taking place that are copycats of what her grandfather done. And so she's afraid of losing her business and all that stuff getting dragged up again. And so she wants to solve the murders and figure out what happened so she can save all that. So it's a really interesting story. I did like who it turned out to be. Like, I feel like the story itself was really good. And just check the trigger warnings on it. It's light. Again, it's kind of along the similar lines as lightheartedness as Finley Donovan. It was a good story. There is some queer representation in this book. Mild. It was a side character. I think there was some language. I just felt like it was not quite as flowy as I wanted it to be and cohesive all throughout. But I read it in a day. I read it less than a day, a few hours. And it was a really good story. So it's good. 3 stars. So the next book I read, I have never read anything by this author as far as a full-length novel, and I'm doing a vlog of me reading her books. So there's several that I read in September. I read a short story of hers a few months ago called Snowflakes by Ruth Ware, and I really enjoyed that short story. So then I decided I would start reading her books. So the next one that I picked up was Ruth Ware's One Perfect Couple. This is her newest release, and this is about a couple that signs up to be on a reality TV show, kind of like Survivor meets some kind of love. I don't watch any of them stories, okay? So I don't know. But that's what they sign up for. And it, to me, they compare it to hearkening to Agatha Christie's classic, And Then There Were None. This high-tension, ingenious thriller follows 5 couples trapped in a storm. And it does give And Then There Were None vibes, but also the Lord of the Flies vibes. So this is a 3-star book for me. I hate the Lord of the Flies. If you really like that story, you might like this one. The language was terrible in it. I think it was clean overall. There is some queer representation in this book. One of the side characters is queer, and then so she signs up to go on this reality TV show for her actor boyfriend. Like they live together. And so when they get there, she doesn't really want to go. I can't remember what she is. If she's a writer or a teacher, I don't remember. I don't remember what her profession is. And then when she gets there, she just wants to get eliminated quickly so she can go back home because she doesn't care anything about being there. She's just trying to do this to get her boyfriend's face out there, because he's an actor and he wants more exposure. And so she gets there and people start dying, and it's not what she signed up for. And then there's this storm. Like it's a big thing. And overall, I liked the story. The ending was kind of a letdown because you're working all the way up to this. So I felt like the ending was a little lackluster. So it's a 3-star, and the language. But overall, I enjoyed the story. I was never bored in it, and it was go, go, go from the get-go. So it was a good story. The next one is another author I had never read anything by. And I seen a movie trailer come up. It's a TV show. They're making it into a TV show. So it's the Never Game by Jeffrey Deaver. And again, it's a mystery. I really like mysteries, in case you can't tell. I think that's most of what's on. That's most of what I read. And he is what do they call him? A tracker? Yes, he's an expert tracker. So he finds people, and so he is hired by a father to find his missing daughter, and so it's really interesting, and it talks about different like technologies and stuff. I don't know how to explain this book, but I enjoyed it. This is more of an actual mystery. There was not a lot of quirkiness to it, and he's just a really good tracker, and it was a really good mystery. I will probably continue on in this series. So yeah, I did not do a good job of explaining it. I'm not good at that, but it was a good book. Then the next one that I read, I listened to on audio from NetGalley, and it's Safe Enough and Other Stories by Lee Child. And so for whatever reason in my brain, I was thinking these were Jack Reacher stories, but they're not. So don't go into it expecting Jack Reacher. He is the author of Jack Reacher, and there's another Jack Reacher novel coming out soon, but this is not it. But all of these, if you like short stories, you'll enjoy these. And if you enjoy the way he writes, then you'll enjoy these. I think Safe Enough was actually my favorite one, but I really enjoyed every single one of them. And I'm one of those people, like, I just listened to this in an afternoon, and I had a lot of driving to do the day that I listened to this, and so I just listened to it. And it doesn't bother me to listen to short story after short story. It was really good, which I really like his writing style. So there is language in these also, because if you've read Jack Reacher, then you know there's a lot of heavy language in them, but they're good mysteries. The next one that I read was Witchy Whiskers by Danielle Garrett. This is a cozy mystery, and it's in a witchy vibe town. And so this is heavy on the witchy, but it's not dark at all. But if you don't want to read witchy, obviously, as the name entails, then you're not going to want to read this book. But the best part about this book was her cat, her familiar. I forget the cat's name. Celine is her name. And she's hysterical. She is so snarky, and she's just so much fun. And so she can do her own kind of magic. And so she's hilarious. And so the main character, what is her name? It doesn't say her name, and I can't remember because it's been too long ago. But she owns like this little magical candle store, and somebody comes in like in the opening of the book, and they have good chemistry or whatever, and then the next day that guy's brother turns up dead. So they kind of work a little together to clear his name and figure out what actually happened with his brother. And you follow her and the cat and everything. There is a seance in this book, sort of. I said, strong witchy vibes. If that's not your game, don't read this. I may not continue just because I feel like even though it was cute and I enjoyed the story and I really liked the cat, it was too much for me. You know what I mean? So I said, it's not dark. It's not teaching you how to do witchcraft. But as a Christian, I just felt it was a little too much for me. But I liked the story overall. I did give it 4 stars as far as the storyline was good and the cat was good. The cat was the best part. He was a snarky cat. So she kind of gives off, in the description, it says that she's kind of like Sophia from the Golden Girls. So if you like that level of snarky and you like witchy books, this would be a good cozy mystery for you. The next one that I read was Hogwarts, The Incomplete and Unreliable Guide by J.K. Rowling. And I gave this 5 stars because I enjoy her writing style so much. It's just my favorite. I just enjoy her writing style. And I wanted to read all the little side books of hers that go along with the Harry Potter series, and that's what this is. And so it's self-explanatory. It's in the Hogwarts world, and that's why I enjoy being back there, and you get to learn a little bit more about different things about the school and the professors, some of them, and so it was interesting, and I really enjoyed it. The next one that I read was The Silent Corner by Dean Koontz. This is a Jane Hawk novel, the first in the series. I gave it 5 stars. There is language in this book, but she is a rogue FBI agent, and her husband he committed suicide, but she believes that someone murdered him. And the more that she discovers that somehow there's some higher ups in even the FBI and the NSA and all that stuff, and they're pulling strings and they're killing people. And so she's trying to get behind this conspiracy and figure it out. And it's very slow. If you don't like slow mysteries, you won't like this. But it's a very slow mystery. And it's a web of all these intriguing things. And it kind of leaves, not necessarily on a cliffhanger, but it ends without the whole story being complete. Like, she accomplished a lot in this book, and she made some headway in her case, but she hasn't completed it yet. And so I am reading book 2 now in October. And so if you don't like it when you don't get it all wrapped up in one book, you also won't like this book. But I have thoroughly enjoyed it. As I said, I gave it 5 stars. It's been excellent, and I'm definitely continuing on. I think there's like 6 or 7 books in this series, and I'll probably read them all. The next one that I read was for Hannah at the Teacher's TBR for her Comfy Cozy Book Club. The Cherry Pie or Die Baker Street Mysteries by C.C. James. This was fun. It's a cozy mystery, and she has a B&B, and she runs it with her aunt and one of her guests, and they do different tours. The history aspect of it was fun. They go around her town and they do tours in these different historical places. And one of her guests ends up dead at one of those historical places. It's a locked room mystery. It's good. I enjoyed the vibes of it, and I enjoyed like our main character and that kind of stuff, but I felt very disjointed to me. It didn't flow smoothly, and I didn't get the cozy vibes as much as I wanted. So now that I've read the Brie Baker series, everything else is going to have a hard time living up to that. So that's just the way it is. And so I just wanted more from this. And maybe you'll get it in the next books. I don't know if I'm going to continue. This was 3 stars. It was a good time. It was okay. The next one that I read was The Keisha of Death by M.C. Beaton. It's the Agatha Raisin series. This is book 1. I've read 1 or 2 out of order in her series, and I wanted to read the whole series. And so I started with book 1, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Her main character in this, Agatha Raisin, is kind of annoying. So know that going in. She's going to get on your nerves. But she is a older character, and she moves to a new town after she retires, and she's trying to acclimate herself in this little village. It's in England, the village of Carsley. And she's just so funny. And so she is bored and lonely and she wants to get involved and, but she wants to be the best at everything. So she buys a quiche and she puts it in this town quiche contest. Well, then one of the judges turns up dead by eating her quiche. So she wants to figure it out, and because she obviously didn't bake it, and so it's really fun. And her stories, MC Beaton's stories, are always so good. I also read the Hamish Macbeth series, thoroughly enjoyed it. Read the entire one, that entire series. So I'm going to have a good time reading these ones. This was 5 stars for me. These have a little bit of language, but other than that, they're clean overall. There are mysteries, so they're going to deal with, they're not a cozy mystery in that there's no language. And sometimes there is a little bit of violence on page, but it's not anything nowhere near like a Jack Reacher novel. So it's good, comfy, cozy vibes, and if you like a snarky, main, older character, you'll like her. And so, but she is a little bit annoying, so just remember that. So the next one that I read was Stamped Out by Tanya Capps. She is the author of the Beaches and Bungalows mystery series. And so I wanted to read other series by her too, because I'm also reading that series. And what I like about her is she writes in, and I think she's from there. I need to do my research and find out, but I think she's from Kentucky, and she writes books that take place in the Daniel Boone National Forest area, and we live very close to them. So I grew up in a little town that's part of the Daniel Boone National Forest, and so I just find it interesting and fun. And so this one also takes place in that similar area, and she's a mail carrier, and she discovers a dead body, and she's trying to figure out what happened. And so I just thoroughly enjoyed it. There is the townspeople like gossip. I wanted more coziness from it, but this is a really quick read, and you do meet a lot of townspeople. So if you don't like to read about a ton of characters, then you may not like this. But she's a mail carrier, and so she walks and talks to all her neighbors, that she delivers mail to. So there's a lot of people you're introduced to. And so that may throw some people off. So there is a lot of characters. But it's interesting and fun and lighthearted. And so I will continue on in this series. The next book that I read was Look on the Bright Side by Kristen Higgins. I also had this on NetGalley as an audiobook. And I had never read anything by this author, and I picked it up because of the dog on the cover. And I wanted it to be a Westie. And it is not. It's a Karen, which is frustrating because Karens are not white dogs. Westies are white dogs. And Cairn Terriers are cute little brown terriers that are bred with Scotties, the white Scotties, to get Westies. And so that's how that breed came along. But I like the doggy aspect of it was good, and I like Cairn Terriers, but it's not a Westie, and it frustrates me when they put the wrong dog on the cover. But I had never read anything from this author before, and I don't know that I'll read anything else by her. I said it was totally a cover read for me. But the language was, there was some bad language, and there is some queer representation in this book as a side character. And then there's a lot of sex talk. Even though there is no sex scenes in this book, there's a lot of sex talk. And so I really didn't like that part of it. And then on top of that, she has sprinkled throughout it different like politics stuff and feminism things. And when I read something like a romance book, I don't want to read about that stuff. I just don't. I want something lighthearted and fun, and I know everybody's different, but for me, I'm not a romance reader, and so when I want something that is romance, I want something lighthearted and fluffy, and I don't want to read about such things as any kind of political rhetoric. Okay, I just don't want to read about that. So this was just a 3-star for me. The overall story was pretty good, and I think if she would have not had all that sex talk in there, and if the language had been clean and left off her political nuggets here and there, then it probably would have been a fine story. If you like Kristen Higgins, more power to you. But she's not the author for me, and I probably won't read any more of her stuff. So the next book that I read was again by Ruth Ware, 0 Days. I gave this 4 stars. There is some language in this book, but they are some of these I'm not even given a synopsis for. Sorry, I'm terrible. I'm new at this. We'll get there. But they are security testers. They call it something else. Penetration specialists is what they call it. And they're hired by companies to break into buildings and test their security, both physically, the building itself, and their network security, so like their internet and stuff. And so, and her husband do this together. And so she's on a job, and she gets caught by the security team, and she keeps trying to get in touch with her husband, can't get a hold of him, and she gets questioned, and when she gets home, he's murdered. And so it's her trying to figure out what's going on and all that stuff. And it's a good book overall. I really enjoyed this one. This is probably my favorite that I've read so far from her. I gave it 4 stars, as I said. The mystery was good. Anyway, it was a good time. Highly recommend it. The next one that I read was Up from Dust by Heather Kaufman. This is Martha's story, Martha from the Bible, Martha of Bethany. This I read for the Revive Book Club by Keisha from A Book Like You. And this is a biblical fiction. I have not read much biblical fiction. And this was if you've not read it, biblical fiction, they take characters from the Bible that we don't know a whole lot about, and they build a backstory for them, and you kind of, so you can give so they make them more real to you, and you can empathize with them and get a picture of why they are. This was a good story. It's a little slow in the beginning, picks up about halfway through, and what did I give this? I gave it 4 stars. It very much, so we get Martha, and it's about, so Martha and Mary and Lazarus, and they're only in the New Testament, in the Gospels. Just a brief story, and we always hear a comparison between Martha and Mary, because Mary is at the feet of Jesus worshiping, while Martha is running around like a busy little bee. And she, often we hear sermons preached about, don't be a Martha, don't be a Martha. And for me, I've always thought it was her attitude, and that's what's portrayed in this book. When the Lord tells her that Mary is correct in what she's doing, because he's only here for a short time. So Mary is at his feet worshiping him. She's done right. It's not to call out that Mary's doing something, that Martha is doing something wrong. Her service is good, but she has the wrong attitude in her service. And she's upset because she's doing all this stuff by herself, and Mary is just sitting there. And especially back then, it was the woman's place to serve in the household. That's just the way it was at that time. And so she felt very put out and upset with her sister, because her sister wasn't doing what she thought she should do. And so she wanted the Lord to help her, And so he tells her that Mary's doing what's right because she's worshiping Jesus. And it has nothing to do with the fact that Martha's working, okay? It's not that. It's her attitude in her service. And that's what this is about. And we have to remember that as Christians. When we get cumbered about and we take our eyes off the Lord, we and we look at what everybody else is doing and how they all appear to be doing okay and well and praised and loved, and we're burdened down with much work in the ministry, and we take our eyes off the Lord, we can get bitter, and we want to make sure that we don't have that bad attitude, that we're serving the Lord because we love the Lord, and that's our form of worship. So we need to remember that stuff. And so this was a really good book overall. And as I said, I gave it 4 stars. I only give 5 stars to books that I'll read again. I'll never reread this book, and it was a bit slow for me. Other than that, it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. It was good. So the next one that I read was Escaping Houdini, Stalking the Jack Ripper series. This is book 3 by Carrie Maniscalco. This one, so this is a Victorian era-ish novel, maybe a little later than that. It may have been just a little bit later than that, but they're still very much in that mindset as far as society goes. Like, this follows a girl who wants to be she's an investigator, and she helps her uncle who is a doctor, and he does like autopsies and stuff for the victims, and that's how she got wrapped up in the Jack oh, goodness gracious. Stalking Jack Ripper. Why can't I say that? I want to say Reacher, and that's not what it is. Jack the Ripper. And so that's how she gets caught up in that case. And this is the 3rd book. So she helped in the Jack Ripper series. She also went and had fun with Dracula in the previous book, and in this one, of course, she is on a voyage to America, and her cousin is dating Houdini, and they kind of get wrapped up in what's going on. Like, there's different performances each night on the ship on their voyage, but people start dying, and they have to investigate, and they have to figure it out before they get to America so they can arrest the killer. And so it's good. It's fun. These are young adult, and the language isn't bad in these, and there isn't any actual sex in these, but there's a lot of making out in this one, and there wasn't in the other ones. So the love interest in this is a boy that works with her uncle, and they work together. So they investigate together. They're partners in crime, and so their friendship and now love story has been a slow build, but they kiss a lot in this book. And so just know that going in. The next book, and the only one that I have a physical copy of because I bought it at our library's book sale, was The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This one I gave 4 stars. This is very predictable to me. Like, I figured out what was happening. I wasn't surprised by anything. But again, the way that she writes, you were just compelled to read it all in one sitting. It was just really good. And so she is a travel writer. We follow a girl who's a travel writer, and she goes on a ship that has a small crew because it's for it's like a luxury. It's very high end, and so there's very few people on this cruise. And so she joins on board, and she starts noticing things that are just a little bit weird, a little bit off, just seem odd. But she's having a hard time because just before she left, somebody broke into her house. So she's having a hard time with anxiety and different things like that. And so she's not been sleeping good, and then she's drinking a lot because this luxury liner, you know. And then she thinks that she seen a body disposed of in the ocean while they're going. And so she's trying to figure out she's trying to get to the bottom of it. And as said, it's very predictable. Like, I wasn't shocked and surprised by anything that happened in this book, but I had a really good time reading it. And so this one is 4 stars. I think my favorite is still 0 Days, but this is a close second. As said, there's nothing earth-shattering, nothing like brand new out of this book. It's very predictable, but it's really good. Highly recommend. I really like her stuff so far. Okay, the next one I read is a cookbook, so we won't talk about that one. So that's the last book I read. That's everything I read in September. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these, let's talk about them in the comments. Let me know what your favorite book of September was. And if you don't have anything else to say, you can leave me some type of emoji in the comments. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know that you were here, leave me a little detective emoji in the comments, because mysteries is definitely my thing. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.